Okay. I don't know the attendance, and they are in this meeting, on this video call. Just for the reason I begin with some information, and probably for these people that you are working on fruit crops, probably you know, but I don't know if there are people involved in other crops like cereals or other annual crops, then probably you don't know. Anyway, I am not sure about that. For the reason I just decided just to introduce a little bit about some agronomical question, not really scientific question. The first question for me is which rootstock we can use in a pear orchard. You know, in each, usually in the majority of the woody crops, there are two materials in the orchard. You have the root system, and we say rootstock, and we have the cultivar, and is the fruits, and finally we harvest just to sell or just to do any transformation. But there are some crops, like the majority of stone fruits and also pear, then we have different options just to graft. In the case of apple, usually we graft apple onto apple, but it's not the case in the case of pear. One of the options is to graft on pear. It seems that the material will be different from the point of view of the genotype, but in each case will be pear in the root system, the rootstock, and pear in the cultivar. But the other option in the case of pear is to graft onto a quince. In this case, this is the aspect of the picture. You can see the root system for a pear. In this case, it's quite usual just to have a important secondary roots. Usually they are more depth. This is just a 1-year-old tree. This is not the same situation when you have an old tree. But in the case of quince, probably this picture is not quite good from the point of view than the normal use, but you can see that the majority of the secondary roots, they are smaller, quite similar, and it's something and is different aspect. In this case, you can see that this is the quince, and this is the cultivar than it was grafted at that moment, and they graft and they grow up, and you have here the cultivar, and you take the fruits just to sell or just to commercialize, and you have the root system. This is quite important, but because we are thinking that two species, they are in contact by using a grafting technology. Consequently, it seems that is a risk that they have an incompatibility. Why? Because we are contact different materials. That this is also can also happen in other crops like stone fruits. Like in some cases, we are grafting almonds onto peach or onto some hybrids interspecifics. From the point of view of the agronomical performance, each species has different advantage or different inconvenience. For example, you are talking about the agronomic questions. Quince is easier from the point of view of the propagation. In some case, in some pear, we have to use in vitro propagation. Usually in quince, it's not necessary. We can do vegetative propagation. But in some pear, the vegetative option is not a good one, and we have to use in vitro. Consequently, it seems that the price of the production of the rootstock will be higher. The second question is the tree vigor. Usually in quince, the vigor of the trees is lower in comparison of pear. And this is something that we want because at that moment, around the world, we are thinking just to have a pear orchard like an intensive way with trees, and the hay usually have not to be higher than 230 or 3 meters tall. If you grow in some pear rootstock, you can have trees and you can rise 4 meters or higher, taller, sorry. Precocity or productivity. Usually in the case of quince, the first year of production is earlier in comparison of pear, And in some cases, the productivity that is not the same than yield usually is higher. Second question is yield efficiency. In this case, just to how to indicate yield efficiency. Usually we are talking about the fruits or the tons per hectare related with the volume of the canopy. Usually queens, the volume of the canopy usually is small, but at the same time, the yield comparatively is higher. Iron chlorose, in this case, Pear is more tolerant in comparison with queens. In some cases, we can grow Pear onto Pear without not iron application in the soil. But in the case of queens, usually it's quite impossible. It depends on the soils. From the point of view of fruit quality, we are talking of fruit quality, we are thinking mainly on fruit size and on sugar content. Usually queens has higher values. It is in the case of sugar content really is not important because Pear is a crop, or is a fruit, and usually the sugar content usually is higher in comparison with other crops. But this is quite important from the point of view of the fruit size because it's an important relation with the final price for the grower. The question will be the abiotic stress. And in this case, Pear is the king because we have no problems on graphing compatibility because we are contact Pear and Pear. It's not the situation in the case of queens. Winter cold resistance in some countries in the north of Europe or north of US or Canada, they have no option to grow with queens like a rootstock because they are more sensitive to the winter cold. Yes, in some regions like France, like Italy, Spain, or Greece, our winter usually is not quite extreme in comparison with the north of Central Europe. In this case, we can grow perfectly with queens, but not in some cases. From the point of view of drought tolerance, usually Pear, they are more resistant or more tolerant. Similar situation for high temperature and similar situation for flooding tolerance. And the third question is related with biotic factors. In this case, we are talking about phytoplasm. Then queens are more sensitive. From the point of view of fire blight, that is a quite important bacteria that is a real problem around the world. Fire blight is the sensitivity of the queens of Pear. They are quite similar. It depends of each queen or each Pear, but globally, from the point of view of the comparison of the species, they are quite similar. In the case of woolly Pear aphid, queens are less sensitive, similar sensitivity from the point of view of color rot, and in the case of queens have some advantage from the point of view of crown gold. Yes, if you are thinking about the, like I explained in the previous slide, you can choose graft onto queens or graft onto Pear. But it depends on in which conditions, on which country you are. It's quite usual that in some cases, Pear is the main option. In some cases, it's queens. For example, in the cases of US, usually Pear is the more important option. But in the case of Europe, or at least in Italy and Spain, usually queens, they are more important anyway than at the moment there are a slight movement to the Pear, but at the moment the situation is this one. And if you want just to use or to begin with a new breeding program, you have to define which is the objectives of the main challenge that you have. And for in this option, you have to go to the queens breeding program or to the Pear breeding program. It's quite difficult just to have with a Pear some of the advantages that you have on the queens and the opposite option, because they are absolutely different species and absolutely different advantage or inconvenience for each one. Related with the growth, you can have like this like a figure about the bigger, like very dwarfing, dwarf, semi-dwarf, semi-vigorous, vigorous, or seedling. And you can have this, the value at 100%, then this is the this is the normal one. In the case of Europe, or part of the Europe, because it's not easy just to do just one option for all the Europe, but In some cases, with BA29 is the main option, with a vigor close to 100. During some years, other breeding programs developed other queens that at the moment they are more interesting, like MA, Sido, and Adams. For example, Sido is quite used in Italy, Adams in Netherlands and Belgium, MA in some cases in Spain and also in Italy. I'm sorry because I have information about Europe, not really about the other countries or other continents. But you can see that there are other queens with a low vigor, like especially this one MC, then you can have a half of the vigor in comparison with the other queens. You can have a quite wide range in the point of view of the vigor. From the point of view of the pair, all these selection that you can say OHA or Fox, Horner, all these different foxes, also Winternally seedling, Conference seedling, Christgau, William seedling, all these, they are Pyrus communis, they are pair. And you can see that usually the vigor is higher. And this is something that is quite important because this is one of the quick questions about which is the main reason just to choose queens or just to have pair rootstock. But for me, it's important just to see that BA29 is just in the middle, but you can see that the majority of queens, they are in a situation of semi-dwarf, dwarf, or very dwarfing system. You have some pyrodwarfs, some cratericus, and they are different, or a melanchier. But the majority, at the same time, the majority of pair rootstock, they are the performance, they are quite similar from the point of view of the vigor, because they are semi-vigorous, vigorous, or seedling, and they are high vigor. Another question on the vigor is the fruit size. In this case, this is an experiment we carry out in Spain. And you can see that the box that they are in your left, the fruit size is higher in comparison with the box that you have in your right. They are similar trees with similar canopy, and the only difference is the rootstock. In this case, they are queens. In this case, they are paired. This is quite usual. Then queens has a higher fruit size, and this is quite important from the point of view the fruit size. In this case, this cultivar is Conference, and is one of the main cultivar in Europe, and is quite important, especially in Netherlands, Belgium, and also in Spain, not in other countries in Europe. And for example, the price if your fruit size is higher than 65 millimeters, is quite important in comparison with if the fruit has a fruit size lower than 65. In this box, probably just this fruit has a fruit size higher than 65, but in this box, the majority of them, the fruit size is higher. Consequently, from the point of view of the agronomical performance, especially economical performance of the orchard, this is quite important just to have this option. In this case, you have a picture just to show the vigor that I showed in the previous slide. In this case, this row is grafted onto queens, and this row is grafted onto pair rootstock. And the last question is the incompatibility that I mentioned before. You can see that in this part, you can see that there is a slight line, and it's just the point where there is the connection between the rootstock and the cultivar. In this case, it's a pair rootstock, and you can see slightly this line, but it's not easy just to identify. You can see that there is just a kind of discontinuity just right here, and it's just the point because the rootstock has a higher vigor in comparison with the cultivar, and this has a slight diminution of the trunk cross-sectional area. But this is the picture with queens. And you can see that the point, the graft union is just right here. And it seems that there is an incompatibility. What happens if you have an incompatibility? It happened that in usually 12 or 15 years, there is a fast death of the tree because there is not continuity in the xylem and the phloem, and consequently the tree die. It's important in some cultivars and also in some queens, because, for example, in the case of BA29, it's a problem that is happened just in some cultivars, but there are other queens rootstock, like MC, for example, especially MC, that is a problem not in the majority of the cultivar, but probably in many cultivars. When we are talking about the cultivars, then they are really a problem. We are talking about Williams, that is the main cultivar in US, for example, and also in some countries of the South of America, and also in other cultivar, that is a cultivar grown mainly in France, and is Guyot. In Spain, we call Limonera, but it's the same cultivar. And this is two cultivars that really they are very sensitive to the incompatibility. And this is really a problem. If you are developing a new cultivar, for example, for US, probably it's not a good option just to go to the Queens because Williams is the main cultivar in this country. Another question that we are worried about that is the climate global change. And there are some questions that we have to think about that, just to think in the future, because the rootstock then probably they are good performance right now, probably would be not a good option just in 20 or 30 or 40 years. For example, we are waiting an increase of the duration of the dry season. What in this situation, sure, then we have to increase the irrigation, millimeters per day, or the number of days that you have to irrigate, or anyway, we have to apply more water than we have in the past. And probably in this case, we are thinking on Pear rootstock because their tolerance to the drought is higher than the tolerance to the low quantity of water. Winter rainy days, there is a decrease around the world. Consequently, there is a reduction of water availability for summer irrigation. In this case, especially in these countries, then they have dams just to have water during the season. This is quite important just to think about that. Spring rainy days, it seems like important spring rain, than more than 40 millimeters in a day. Consequently, is important from the point of view of the water flooding, erosion lands, and also just do the loss of nutrients that they are in the soils. Also, an increase in the temperature and an option of winter time. It seems that our growing season will be will be longer, because the leaf drop can happen not in October, can happen in November, or in some cases in December. Consequently, our growing season is higher. Consequently, the quantity of water that probably we need just to maintain the trees will be higher. And this is something that we are to think about that. In the case of winter time, will be interesting from the point of view of the chilling requirements of the cultivar. We have no data sure about if the performance of the Pear or queens, they are different in this situation. And finally, the increase in temperature and season, and also the effect is just increasing irrigation needs, but also just to have some problems from the point of view of the performance or the fruit quality, like some physiopathies or some disorders can happen just for, especially if the summer is too warm. This is a slide. I want just to focus just in this publication from Tony Webster in 2003, just 20 years ago. And you can see at that moment that Tony Webster identified which are the promising new Pear rootstocks that they are developing at that moment. Really, there are not really news or not really innovation on this way. Some of the breeding programs are the same, and some of them, they have not really important success just to launch to the market new ones. The only, from all this number, there are just two of them, in my opinion, that they have any impact in the PRH, that is this EMH, that is a queens developed in UK, and also this Pear, that is a Pear rootstock developed in France by the rest of the rootstock that at that moment was important. They have not really important impact in the market. Right now we have a new one, two new ones, Pear rootstock, and I explained you some information about that. That is Fox 9 from an Italian breeding program, and also Farol 87, that is from US. Just some pictures about, in this case, is picture from our country about how is the size or how is the types of orchard that we are looking for. You can see that the height is around 3.5 meters approximately, and you can see the important crop loads, no important vigor. You can see an important fruit size in this case is covered. I will show you some other data. This is the surface in the Spain, and we are just a slight diminution from so many years ago, 20 years ago. Right now, we are close to 20,000 hectares. In our case, the main cultivar is Conference, and it's an European cultivar. After that, there are 4 cultivars with similar importance. Blanquilla, then in other countries, they say Espadona, and it's Spanish cultivar. Ercole Nicosia, and is an Italian cultivar. Limonera Guyot, and is come from France. Williams. But in our case, the main one, we have no problems from the point of view of the compatibility. The majority of production, 79% is just in this place, and this is Ebro Valley, just for these people then you don't know our country. This is close to Barcelona, and it's a Mediterranean Sea, and just in the middle of the country is Madrid. That is an intermediate situation between Madrid and Barcelona, and the Ebro Valley come from here and has this way. You can see that's a picture, and you can see then after that we will see other pictures. Then the majority of the pear growing in Spain, they are focusing this Ebro Valley, that is this one. You can see this green part is just because in the middle you have the river, and you have irrigation receiver on the left or on the right, and other rivers in the same situation that come the water from the dams, and they are located in the Pyrenees, in the border France and Spain. And you can see that approximately half of the Spanish production is located just right here in Lleida area where I'm located. And the other part is just in Aragon and La Rioja and Navarra, that is also in the Ebro Valley. I picked some points for the main cities like Pamplona, Logroño, that is well known by the quality of the wines, Zaragoza, Huesca, and Lleida. And just this picture, you can see that really the river is just in the middle. You have, in this case, it's not the river, it's a channel that comes from the mountains, and you have parts of on the left, on the right of this channel, we can do the irrigation. But you can see that out of this part is like a desert, because you can see that it's absolutely dry. In this case, we can grow some winter cereals, but nothing more, because the rainfall is around 300 millimeters per year. And especially just in springtime, not in summertime. For the reason we have the option just to grow any winter crops. Anyway, this picture is just to show the quality of the soils. And this situation, our pH is 7.5 to 8.3. And the active limestone is from 8 to 15%. Consequently, our soils is really a calcareous soils, very calcareous soils. Consequently, we have problems of iron growth. And right now I show you a picture of, a movie about the aspect of the fruits of the orchard. In this case, it's a central axis. There are some important growth. You can see that, and there are important new shoots. And in some cultivars, they are quite interesting, but in other ones, it's something that we don't want. Sorry, this is the same one. This is another picture with other train system. In this case, it's like fruiting wall or a 2D system. You can see that there are 2 axes by tree. And in this case, you can see that the bigger is lower because you can see that the new shoots or the 1-year shoots, they are shorter in comparison with the previous slide. Sorry. In this case, the characteristic of our Spanish pear orchard characteristic is we are thinking in a medium-low vigor, different situation in the 80s or 90s, where Branquilla was the main cultivar. It's not the situation, because Williams, especially Williams and Conference, they are not really important vigor. They are not really vigorous in comparison with the other cultivars. Our soil is a calcareous soil. Consequently, we have to apply iron chelate year by year. If not, we have no option. Incompatibility is a problem just for Williams and Guyot Limonera. That is around 18% of the production of the surface. Consequently, it's not really important for us because the rest, 82% of the surface of cultivars, we have no problems on this way. Conference is the main cultivar that we have no problems with incompatibility. And cold damage rootstock at winter time, it doesn't exist because our climate at winter time is cold, but it's not really quite cold in comparison with the north of the Central Europe. And full production is from the 4th or 6th leaf, 4th or 6th year. In this situation, this is a picture of a Queen's rootstock. Queen's rootstock is the main option for us. But anyway, it's strange because we have to apply iron chelate year by year. But for us, vigor is the key point. Just to apply iron chelate year by year from the point of view of sustainability is not a good option, but we know that we can manage the orchard with this apply year by year. Consequently, at that time, we decide just to begin a joint project about a new breeding program. In this case, our objective, for this reason I explained the situation in Spain, is just to focus on tolerant iron chlorose new rootstocks, low vigor, and good yield and agronomical performance. You can see that there is no animation related with incompatibility, with cold resistance, with drought, and it's strange because we know that we can grow with the water that we have. Sure that with climate change we have to change and to move, but at that moment we are talking about at the end of 19th. This was the main objective for our breeding program. And for this reason, this is a joint project with INRA in France. We decided to do something absolutely different, and is an interspecific cross. In this case, we use Pear, that is a selection from INRA, and we do crosswalk with other Pyrus species. Then in the 90s and 80s, INRA, they decided to do a prospection in the Mediterranean area, in the African and also in the European, just to check if there is any Pyrus species, then it seems that they have good performance, just in forest or just in, not in growing parts, just in mainly in forest. And they decide just to do cross with those cultivars. In this case, we know that we have no problem with compatibility, and probably the vigor of the Pear is higher. Probably we can reduce the vigor by using these Pyrus communis, or Pyrus amygdaliformes, or Pyrus amygdaliformes persica, or Pyrus elagrifolia. From the point of view of the research, we introduce seeds or seedlings for Pyrus communis Williams in an open pollinated option. That is something that some growers they use, they say Kriskengal. He has some pictures about the Pyrus amygdaliformes, and you can see the aspect of the tree is not really like a pear because the growth is quite vertical, or in this case with these open branches. This is the aspect of the flower type of Pyrus agrifolia, and is quite similar to the flower in comparison with pear, probably higher number of flower by flower clusters. And this is a Pear, and we use like female just to pollinate from pollen from this or from this one on these flowers. And I show you this our breeding program, not with the idea just to explain that our option is the best one, just to explain how is the normal phases or the normal methodology than usually the other breeding programs they do. Usually there are 3 phases. The first phase is just with the seedlings. In this case, we have no repetition. You have just 1 tree or one for each genotype. Usually we have to graph just to check the performance that in relation with the objectives that we want. When we select some of the cultivars, some of the selection, sorry, we go to the phase 2. In our case, we call pre-selections. You can see that from 2040, at the moment it has 2054. It seems that we select around 12% of the initial seedlings. And in this case, we graft once again. In this case, in the phase 2, we decided just to have 2 locations and also different a number of trees for each selection, for 8 in each location, just to have data, just to do any statistical analysis. And finally, in the phase 3, in this case, at the moment, we have 60 selections. Yes, I want to put down that we begin from 2041. Right now, we have 63, sorry. And the idea is just to have 1 or 2 that will be quite interesting, maybe 1, and we begin with 2000. And in this case, we go just to have in 1 location, and in this case, we use 2 cultivars. We use 2 cultivars because we are thinking that conference is the main one for us, but we are thinking just around the world, yes, if it's possible us to use the rootstock in other countries. In this case, we use Williams, that is the international cultivar around the world. But you can see that phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1, there is no repetition, just 1 plant for each genotype. Phase 2, we have 2 locations and 8 trees for each selection. And in phase 3, we have 2 cultivars and 6 trees for each selection. And in this case, our methodology, we decide just to compare each one of selection in comparison with queens that are BH29. You can see that this is, and they are yellow. This is BH29. This is 1 seedling, another seedling from our breeding program. Once again, BH29. You can see here the layout. You can see that you have BH29, P. This is one of the crows. The 10-3, the 10-9, 8, 7. Each one is different. P257 is the family. We have so many individuals oscillating for each family, for each cross. And in this case, we have the seeds. We have the germinated seeds. We have to graft, and we select, we cut, and we have a new growth. And within new growth, we do an in vitro propagation. In this case, we do different assessments. In this case, sclerose by visual symptoms. There is an international scale from 0 to 5. 0 with no symptoms. 5 is this tree, and is all the leaves, they are yellow. And we use a SPAT just to determine the chlorophyll content in the leaves. We do every year, but once per year, usually at the springtime. We measure vigor. In this case, we measure trunk cross-sectional area. In the cultivar, is at 20 centimeters distance from the graft union. And we have to do this at least during 3 years, in this case on conference. And I show you some data. Just related the percentage of seedlings without chlorosis symptoms. There are different orchards or different plots. I want just to point out just in the average, in this case. Black one is the Queen's BH29, and you can see that 50% of the BH29 show no symptoms, consequently the 50% show symptoms, and you can see that all these new cross that we are selecting, all of them, this is average with the 2000 seedlings, not the seedlings that we select. And you can see that in this case, We are from 62, 63 to 60% of the seedlings, they have no symptoms on conference. That is an important advantage in comparison with BH29, because in all of them, we don't apply any iron chelate or any iron nutrients. And this case is a trunk cross-sectional area. We are looking for new rootstock with a bigger, similar, or slightly lower in comparison with the BH29. You can see that the bigger of queens is around 10 centimeters square. And just this one, that is Epirium biamygdaliformes, is quite similar, close to 9 centimeters. But the rest, you can see that the value is from 5 to 7, and it's an important reduction in comparison with BH29. Consequently, our hypothesis is to do an interspecific cross with the use of some genetic information for other Pyrus communis. If you are looking for higher tolerance to chlorose, a reduction in vigor, it seems that we have success. They are thinking about the average, about these 2,000 selections. If we mix both questions, then is the key for us, is the symptom seedlings without chlorosis symptoms and also with a vigor lower than 50%, and is really a very dwarfing rootstock. You can see that approximately a 15% of the selection has these both symptoms. More, the majority of them is that, and we go to the phase 2. And you can see that we are talking about 12%. In this case, the percentage is a little bit higher, but you can see that the majority of the trees, and they have these values, pass to the phase 2. Okay, this is phase 2, in this case in 2 locations with different soils, same cultivar, 4 repetitions. In one location, we have 1 tree for each repetition. In the other location, we have 2 trees. And in this case, just to do the comparison, we use Queen's BH29, but also Quiz MA in one location and Quiz MC in the other location. And this is just the aspect of the tree. And you can see that the majority of them, they are green one, because there are some queens, but the majority of the trees, in this case, they are the selections in the phase 2. The methodology is quite similar. You can see just right here, after we cut, we do the in vitro propagation, we plant, we graft, and we do also the evaluation. At the end, once again, we cut just to do the in vitro propagation. The assessments in this case, they are quite similar, but some of them are new ones. We continue with chlorose, with visual symptom and with SPAT. In the bigger, similar value, tank cross-sectional area. But in this case, we add other evaluation like branching performance and fruits or flower cluster tree. Why? Because we are looking for a tree and we have an important branching density or important ability of the research just to promote branching performance of the conference. And also we remove these selections and they have not flower after or at least a lower density of low flower intensity at blossom time, or in case that they have no fruits. Because in some cases, some of the Pyrus communities, some of the Pyrus species or Pear species promote an important growth of the wood, but no production. In this case, we identify some of them and we remove for the phase 3. And this case is phase 3. In this case, it's just one location, Jimenez, both cultivars, Conference and Williams, 5 repetition, 1 tree. But in this case, we include just Queen's BH29. In some cases, we apply with iron chelate, and in some cases without. Just to check the performance, or just to compare the performance of the new selection in comparison with one with other ones. Sorry. This is a summary about the 3 phases. And the moment that we have, right now we are in phase 3, we begin this trial in 2021. Consequently, this year, we are waiting just to have the first fruits, just to evaluate the yield performance. And this is just a summary about the 63 selections. About this is 63, this is then we are do the trial now. This is just to present the methodology that we are using, are with some changes that are quite similar in the different of the rootstock methodology, and is, I don't know, quite difficult, but quite different in comparison with this breeding program that they are focused on cultivars, because in our case we have to check the performance just on the fruits of the rootstock. And for this last part, just to how we can do the evaluation about the performance of the rootstock on the cultivar, I show you a trial with the evaluation of different rootstock. In this case, is Pear in comparison with queen rootstock. No one from the IRTA, just for other breeding programs, just to check how is the phase 3, and how the phase 3, the good option is to do in different location in terms of different climatic and soil condition. In this case, this is a similar picture than I showed before, and you can see that the majority of Pyrus and ES-OHA, Fox, Bartlett ceiling, Weternelli ceiling, they are bigger is higher than they are just right here. And the queens, they are in this part, and they are mainly, the majority, they are just right here. In this case, the trial that I want to show you, we compare Fox 9, Farol 87, Queens VA29, Pseudo Queens. Queens VA29 is Pseudo Queens for us. This is the standard ones. And Fox 9 and Farol 87, it was the new ones, and we want just to check the performance. In this case, the variety was Conference. The plantation was in February 2012. Anyway, in the Farol 87, we planned 1 year later. Consequently, the comparison has to be calmly. This is the mark distance, 4 by 1.2, and it was a central axis, the train system. On the point of view yield tree, you can see in blue VH29, orange Cedo, and in green Fox 9. You can see that usually Queens, the entry on production is better in comparison with Fox 9. You can see we planted in 2012. In the third year, we have from 12 to 50 kilos, and you can see that the Fox 9 is close to 5 kilos per tree. Next year, fruit set was not quite good, not in 2017, but in 2018, we are, at that moment, we are close to the final yield or to the full production. And you can see that there is any advantage at the beginning. There is no difference. You are here, no difference, but you can see that when the trees, they are in full production, there are no difference, but it seems that there is an important increase in the case of Fox, and it's a Pear rootstock. In 2021, there is a diminution of the crop load, but you have some advantage in the case of Fox. And finally, 2002, in the last year, there are no difference. When we are going just to average, we can see that globally they are not important. Which is the explanation? The explanation is sure that Queens, they have more advantage from the point of view of the entry of production, but Fox 9, the efficiency finally is higher, and consider this disadvantage that Fox 9 has at the beginning, finally it finished, because you can see that the average, they are quite similar. We are thinking about all the period, but just in that time, there are no difference. But if we are talking about yield in fruits per tree, in some cases, the conclusion, they are similar, but they're not in all the case. You remember in the first year, in 2015, BH29 and Sido have similar performance in comparison with Fox9, but right now you can see that Sido is an intermediate situation, 170 something and 25 fruits per tree. No difference. Oh, in this case, it seems that there is some advantage in the Fox9. No difference, but anyway, it's quite strange because there are important difference. But anyway, there was the variability of the trial. No difference, but the number of fruit size is higher. Oh, in this case, yes, 2020, also in 2021, but not in the case in 2022. But in this case, we can see that the Fox9 has a higher performance, yes, in the global trial in comparison with the queens. It seems consequently this rootstock has the option just to produce higher number of fruits, but when we are talking about the kilos per tree, the value are quite similar. Why? Well, the reason is by the fruit size. Anyway, the first conclusion is BH29 and Sido show a better entry into production. But Fox9 has a higher production capacity, especially in fruits per tree. But let's go to the fruit weight. No difference. Yes, difference. Remember that in this year, there are no difference in the number of fruits per tree and no difference in yield per tree, but the fruit weight are different. Once again, Fox9, the fruit weight is lower, quite lower, 190 grams in comparison with 2020, 2040. No difference in this year, not in this year, not in this year. Anyway, there are no difference, but all the time, the queens, the fruit weight is higher. Yes, in this case, once again, important difference, and not in this year. And we can see the average, you can see the advantage of the BH29 and Sido. Consequently, if you are thinking about which cultivar you want to grow and which important is fruit size in this cultivar, you have to think if you go to a Fox9 or go to a BH29 or a Queens in general. First conclusion is BH29 and Sido have higher fruit weight and fruit size in comparison with Fox9. Tree vigor. You can see that the vigor of the BH29 and Fox9 is quite similar. Yes, at the end, it's a tendency, but really there's not significant difference, and the BH29 there's slightly. But when you can see the trees in the orchard, is quite similar. But Sido, the tree vigor, evaluated like trunk cross-section area, is lower from 2019 to the final of the trial. Since Sido has higher fruit size, important performance from the point of view of yield, and the number of the trunk cross-section area is lower, consequently the canopy is smaller in comparison of the trees. It seems that if you have a small tree, a small canopy, for a fruit grower, you can introduce higher number of trees per hectare, and consequently the yield from the point of view of kilos per tree are similar, but if you have higher number of trees, the yield expressed in tons per hectare will be higher. BH29 and Fox9 have similar and superior vigor to Sido. And this is, yes, you can see when I show you the graph on the fruit weight, was some years where the fruit size was similar in all the rootstock, another one was different. But right now I want just to show just the 4 year that Diana expressed in this case. In this case, you have a graph when you have here the grams and this is the fruits per tree. In this case, I include Farol 87, and you can see that BH29 and Sido, the number of fruits per tree is lower and the fruit weight is higher. But anyway, this year with this fruit size is a year with a low fruit weight in comparison with a normal or standard year. for both for 4 cultivars, 4 rootstocks, sorry, excuse me. In this case, okay, it's higher, and you can see that the number of fruits, they are similar. We're talking about 200, close to 200 for BH29 Amcido, 200, and in this case 300, 350. You can see similar values, and you can see that the Fox and Farrell, when they are pair rootstock, it maintains the number, the fruit weight, quite similar in comparison with this one, but really BH29 Amcido, they are an important increase. You can see from 140 to 170 is 30 grams. It's quite important with similar number of fruits per tree or in comparison with the 4 rootstocks. It seems that this year was more favorable from the point of view of fruit weight. In this case, once again, is a low fruit weight year. You can see that the values is quite similar. And in this case, they are not advantage from the point of view of the BH29 Amcido. In this case, the number is different. It's the only year that we have a lower number of fruits per tree, but the advantage of the Cido and BH29 in comparison with Pear rootstock is patent. Our conclusion is, if your growing condition from the point of view of the climatic condition of the year, the fruit set of the year, of the soil, is that you have a situation that you predict that the fruit weight will be higher, just to go to the BH29 Amcido is a good option because you have an important advantage in this year and this year. But if you cultivar or your weather condition or your climate condition as for you, fruit weight is not important, probably go to a Pyrus like Fox 9 or Farrow 87 probably would be a good option. The conclusion is Fox 9 and Farrow 87 have a similar fruit weight and size. Fox 9 and Farrow 87 have a higher load capacity than BH29 and Cido. And the difference between queens and pear trees is greater in condition favorable to fruit growth. But in the case that they have not conditions favorable, the fruit weight, fruit size performance is quite similar in both, in 4. Another way just to explain the vigor, this is the option that I showed you before, transcrop section area. In this case, I include that 100% will be BH29 and it's a standard one. Cido is a reduction of 27, quite similar in Fox 9, and Farrow is quite similar to the BH29. But if we are expressing this vigor like shoots unit weight at winter time, you can see that there is an important difference than especially Cido and Fox 9. There is an important reduction in comparison with BH29 and Farrow. It seems that these trees, the final canopy at the end of the season is especially lower, quite lower, is smaller in comparison with BH29 and Farrow. As you can see, just the picture, and you can see that the BH29, you can see that the all space is occupied by the tree. In the case of Cido, you can see that there is some holes. For this reason, you can, in an orchard, you can include more trees per orchard. In the case of Fox 9, you can see that it's quite similar to the BH29, but not really. There's a slight diminution. And in Farrow 87, probably is similar or higher in comparison with BH29. So this one is quite important just to see the difference in the orchard, not only just the graphs. You can see in this case that the difference, BH29 and Cido, you can see that the vigor, you can see that this is one year shoots. You can see this one, especially just at the top of the tree. In this case, there is no one. You can see that the shoots is quite smaller. Crop load is quite similar, probably a little bit higher in BH28 and Cido. And you can see that the performance on the tree is quite different. This is a good picture just to show you, and probably you can include 25 or 30% more trees per hectare in this with this rootstock. And we compare Fox 9 to Faro 87. You can see that for Faro 87, the vigor is especially higher in comparison with Fox 9, but also in comparison with BH29 and Fox 9. Probably is a situation quite close to the BH29, in some cases a little bit lower. The conclusion is Faro 87 has a superior vigor to Fox 9, yes, in the comparison of the Pyrus. And this is a kind of summary. I think this is the last slide. Just a kind of ranking about for each question, which is the best option. From the point of view of entry into production, BH29 is the best one, with quite close is Saido, and Fox 9 really is a little bit lower. If we are talking about full production, Faro 87 and Fox 9, they are the best one with similar performance in both of them, with the capacity to produce. And BH29 and Saido, they are in the second place with similar performance both. From the point of view of fruit size, we have Saido and BH29 with a higher fruit size, especially Saido, and with an important difference for Faro 87 and Fox 9, and the fruit size is quite lower that I showed you in so many graphs before. From the point of view of vigor, Faro 87 is the vigorous one, followed by BH29, quite similar to Fox 9, and an important diminution of Saido. And from the point of view of compatibility, the best one are Faro and Fox 9 in any cultivars. In the case of confidence, we have no symptoms about incompatibility, but for the other cultivars, we know that BH29 and Saido, they are in a no risky situation, but it depends mainly about which cultivar you are growing up. Okay, thank you very much, in this case in Spain, for your attention.